Hi guys, Dave here. Welcome to my first art tutorial. So I did this artwork of Megazone 2-3 in a blue pencil earlier, and now I'm going to ink it for you guys. So I'm going to be using some Copic multi-liners to ink it, and this is a 7, but I'll also be using a 2 later on just to, get the details of the face and the eyes and whatnot on Eve here. So if you guys are not familiar with Megazone 2-3, it's an original OVA that came out in 1985, and it kind of had, I guess, genre-wise, it was kind of like sci-fi, cyberpunk, I guess. It had like kind of a similar theme to Akira in a way, but I believe it came out before Akira, where you kind of have this street gang and they find this government-owned motorcycle that transforms into a robot called a Garland. So at any rate, this particular character that I'm inking right now is Eve, and she's kind of like this this computer program that sings, and kind of she does like propaganda and stuff like that. So you see her like throughout the city, like singing on billboards and stuff like that. So, and then the main character is Shogo, where he has the motorcycle that transforms into a robot, and you kind of follow his adventures. So she's a pretty cool looking character. I mean, you'll see that she kind of resembles Minmay in a way from Macross, because they have the same character designer. So Macross, Megazone 2-3, Gunbuster, Orgus, were all designed by Hirohiko Mikimoto. If you're familiar with his artwork, you'll see the similarities. I mean, at least I tried to capture, his style in this particular piece. So if you recognize that, then that's the reason. So now I'm just kind of like doing the details of her eyes here, and kind of fleshing out her eyes and her eyelids and her eyelashes. So giving it a little more depth and weight, trying to kind of bring her to life here. And it's kind of like a balancing act. It's like, okay, don't want to do too much detail on her eye, but definitely want to set the mood. And the characters of the 1980s, they were so beautiful, and they had so much detail that it's just, you just don't see that in anime today. I mean, the 90s had a fairly good amount as well, so not to take anything away from the 90s, but you really just don't see this kind of detail in anime anymore. Everything is just very minimal, I feel, and the colors are a lot flatter and not as many shadows as you used to see in the 80s and 90s. So, kind of miss that. But, there's something to say, something to be said for all the, more modern anime as well. So, I'm sure you guys have a lot of favorites, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. So, they say that 2018 was a really good year for anime. So, if you guys liked Attack on Titan, or stuff like Kill la Kill, or Darling in the Franxx, then, One Punch Man, all of that good stuff, then obviously there's something to be said for all of that stuff too. So it's not like anime died in the 80s or anything like that. So, but anyway, just going, putting all the minor details in her eyes here, and reflective, like little bubbles and stuff like that, and eyelashes. So if you didn't know, there were actually 3 movies to Megazone 2-3. And my favorite was part 1, which was released in 1985. So I thought that was, it was great. When part 2 came out, it was totally, the character designs were totally different. They didn't look like this anymore. They went for like a more realistic look, which I guess, which is cool too. And a lot of people liked part 2, so definitely give both part 1 and 2 check them out. So part 3, didn't really, not as many people liked part 3, but it's out there and you can check it out, give your own opinion on that. I don't know that I have part 2 and 3. I definitely have part 1 on Blu-ray, so I'll have to look at that again sometime soon, because I remember loving it so much. Just kind of putting the details of her hair in here. She's got really long, like, white hair. And they kind of do like a green shadow or a blue shadow to it in the movie, which I'll have to decide, which I want to go with like later on. Trying to do her lips and trying to be really careful with the lips, because lips can be difficult to make. For some reason, eyes are way easier for me to draw than lips. So now just inking in her earring. She's got these really big like hoop earrings that have like a triangle in the center, like just very 80s, just huge earrings. Not even sure if, like, when you see a lot of anime movies or TV series nowadays, if they even have earrings. Maybe just like small studs or something. But in the 80s, like, accessorizing was like super important. So now doing Shogo's hair here, and he kind of had that same style that Rick had in Macross. So they looked very similar, as a matter of fact, the characters. I think at one point, when Harmony Gold was, I think, trying to distribute Megazone 2-3, they were trying to say that, that the Megazone 2-3 characters and the Macross characters were like the same characters, and I don't think Japan was okay with that. Like, I don't think they liked that they were trying to kind of mesh the history of these characters. So he's going to kind of have just like darker eyes and less detail than her. Sorry, I'm shaking the table a little bit here. You can see the table shaking, and I'm just trying to get a lot of these, dark areas finished up real quick. So a lot of these movies were really hard to find back in the 80s. Afterward they came out on DVD, and that was really cool to have. So here I'm kind of drawing him just kind of like, with his like shaggy hair and his goggles, like he was on his bike, which I thought was a really cool look for him. I'll end up coloring all of his hair black, or I mean most of it black later on. So, but right now I just want to like outline the hair and get a better sense of what all is going on, with his hair and his eyebrows and all that, that good stuff. So you can see I made some highlights in his hair. So, a lot of it will be black, but then there'll be like some gray or brown color later on that'll divide that up. His eyebrows are pretty thick and dark. So just trying to kind of blacken those out. With this like little liner. Getting into like a little detail here. So I'm going to use a magnifying glass just so I get that little corner. I'm just trying to be really delicate here and, not kind of color in the highlights of his eyes. That way later on I don't have to use like too much white gel pen or anything to make highlights. Like they're already there. Got a little bit of eyelash as well. I mean, back during this time when Megazone 2-3 came out, like as far as like animation, especially in the West, I mean, you really had like Heavy Metal maybe. And I don't know if Heavy Metal came out first or if Megazone 2-3 came out first, but there weren't a lot of like movies or animation that was out like this at the time. You really had to find stuff like that. Like maybe the Macross movie was around. That was pretty cool. Megazone 2-3, Heavy Metal. Gosh, just trying to think of other movies that were out. I mean, there wasn't a lot to talk about. Finishing up his eyebrows here. I mean, the hair kind of like just melts kind of into his eyes and whatnot, but once I color that black, it's not going to stand out as much, so it'll highlight here by the corner of his eye, a little shadow I should say, giving his eye a little more depth. His eyebrows, defining his eyebrows and giving him kind of like a little bit of like he's folding in his eyebrows, like he's kind of mad or tough. And then his goggles. Sideburns. Anime characters always had like really long sideburns in the 80s. And prior to that too, like in the 70s, they did as well. Like if you look at like a lot of Go Nagai's characters, you know, from his robot like series, they all had like really big pointy sideburns. So if you look at like old Mazinga Z movies or the TV shows, like you can see a lot of the characters have that. I'm just trying to be really careful here as I'm inking, not to screw anything up too bad that I can't fix. Especially when you start laying in like a lot of the black, you know, you can end up like coloring something black that wasn't supposed to be black. So, you know, really just trying to stay focused and separating, you know, a lot of the things that I'm inking here in my mind. This t-shirt. And he has this leather jacket on that's armless, like a cut-off leather jacket, and has big lapels. And it's funny because the lapels on his jacket remind me a lot of Captain Harlock's jacket. And it's just funny to see how, you know, a lot of these character designs, you know, might have been inspired by each other. So if you look at the Macross characters and you know, some of the people on the ships, like the captain and stuff like that, you know, they've got these really big lapels on their jackets, and very similar to Captain Harlock as well. Doing this shadow under his chin. I'll end up probably, I didn't do it here, but I'll end up probably making his chin smaller, because I think maybe for this character, like maybe I went just like too big on the chin here. But a lot of their chins were just kind of like narrow and long, even for like the female characters. So I guess here in the United States, the film was licensed by AD Films and was released May 30th, 1986. The runtime of the first movie, Megazone 2-3, is 80 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, that was part 2. I'm wrong. Part 1 was March 9th, 1985. Also 80 minutes, though. And also AD Vision was the licensee back then. So now I'm just like kind of doing the details of her other earring, which you really can't make out much. So I'm going to start inking the garland back here, which, you know, I wish this this board was kind of like a little bit bigger and I had more room to kind of play around with, but this is kind of, I mean, it's an 11 by 8.5, 110 pound weight paper, so it's a good little stocky paper, you know, almost like a board. That way when I start coloring it, you know, it holds the colors real nice and it doesn't bleed through too much. And then in the background you can see I just kind of did this like 80s looking grid in the background with some circles. So now I'm just kind of like inking her hair, and it's just kind of flowing. She's got like pretty long hair. You know, I kind of really wanted to do more detail of the characters, but trying to get like a lot of the feel of the anime into one picture is not easy. You know, getting 3 characters or 2 characters in the Garland, you know, on the cover here isn't, you know, that easy. So especially because I wanted to make a bold statement and have large images. Inking the headpiece here, which would be much larger than this. I really don't have room to make it larger. Shogo really needs to, you know, the Garland needs to be big enough that Shogo can sit in it, so it would be larger than this. The Garland has like a kind of headlight on top of its head here. So that's what I'm drawing right now. The design is similar to like the Valkyries from Macross. If you haven't seen Megazone 2-3 and you've seen Macross, and the Garland looks similar to that. Except it transforms into a motorcycle, you know, instead of like a jet. Would love to get my hands on a toy of the Garland with Shogo. That would be really cool. But I think they're somewhere around like $300 to $500. They're pretty expensive. I don't know if I want to spend that kind of money. And right now I kind of really don't have anywhere to put it except on my drawing desk, which, you know, I'd rather have empty for drawing. But my display case and my bookshelves are pretty full. It's hard to draw things that are round without like messing them up. This is one of the tires of the motorcycle. But it's kind of like, you know, the view from the inside. Because it kind of, when it turns into the Garland, when the Garland turns into like the robot, the front tire, I believe, kind of like splits in half. So you get like half of the tire on one shoulder and the other half of the tire on the other shoulder. So doing the grid in the background just to give the art piece like some depth, and I just like to throw something in the background. Hopefully I didn't go a little overboard here. So now I'm going to start coloring and doing a flesh color here using Copic markers. And they give a nice, kind of smooth texture to the markers. So trying to have as little amount of streaks as possible. And if you guys have ever used Copic markers, they're like super forgiving. Like I've messed up some pieces pretty bad and then just gone back and like saved it with Copic markers. Copic markers and like white gel pens. So, I try to just be very, very careful and try to remember, where I'm putting highlights and, and blacks and stuff like that. So I don't have to go into like marker surgery mode and try to fix things, which I've done several times. So try not to go that route on this piece. So Eve's eyes are kind of like a golden color, really pretty. So doing like a darker flesh color for the shadows of her face, which are created by her hair. She's one of my favorite characters. I think I kind of gravitated towards her more than I did with like Min-Mei or Lisa in Macross. Something about her look was like cooler to me, like more new wave or something like that. So now I'm doing the hair, and this is kind of like a gray Copic marker that I'm using here, but it has a little bit of an olive tinge to it, which I thought would be good for his hair. Because it has kind of like a brown feel to it, but it's still gray. So now putting in all the blacks, and didn't want to bore you with the time it took to go in and put the blacks of his hair in. It was just super time consuming and painstaking, just getting those bangs and everything and not going out of the lines on that. Highlights of his nose. Now doing the visor of his sunglasses. Kind of like his motorcycle glasses, so it's kind of doing the visor, which is a blue. Putting in the flesh color of his face. I'll put some highlights in just like I did on Eve. It's always difficult because I have like several colors like for flesh, and it's always scary, like, you know, if you do the wrong color of flesh, like it could end up looking like too pink or too dark, because some of them are a little more on the darker side. So it's like some siren or something going off outside. Alright, sounds like they taken care of that. So here we go, putting some highlights, some shadows on his neck and the side of his face, give it a little more depth. Unfortunately, I don't have the whole video of coloring this piece for you guys, but I thought it would just be too like super long, and I was trying to keep it like around half an hour. So maybe the next one I do, I'll do in 2 parts instead. I'll do like, or maybe 3 parts, like 1 drawing, 1 inking, and then 1 color. So doing some color pencil in here to, you know, give some highlights on the mask. And Copic markers and color pencils, they go really well together. So if you're ever, if you're ever doing like markers, like color pencils are really good for highlighting markers. And these are Prismacolor color pencils, so I've just been using them since I was a little kid, so I still use them. When I was a kid, my mom worked at like a stationary, like, I don't know if it, like kind of like a distribution center, then kind of supplied all the stationery stores and printers and stuff like that with supplies. So she always brought me home a bunch of markers and, you know, a bunch of color pencils and erasers and all kinds of cool stuff. So certain brands I still use. I didn't have Copics back then though. I kind of did research on Copics myself. I think the markers I was using back then were called InDesign or something like that, or design markers. So, which last forever, by the way, but they've got like a really big like alcohol smell to them. So Copic markers don't have as much of a smell. They're a little more on the pricier side. But I like them I like the aesthetics of the Copic markers. So now I'm just doing some highlights on the lapels of his jacket. And this is the pocket on the right hand side. Filling in the blacks. Now I'm going to leave some white spaces just to give it like a reflection. And this is a Faber-Castell marker, and the good thing about the Faber-Castell marker is that it doesn't leave like a yellow residue around it, so that's why I use it. Some people like using Sharpies, but I heard that Sharpies they leave like a yellow residue sometimes around them. Later on you'll see like a yellow residue come out, so that's why I'm using a Faber-Castell. So just going to do some highlights on the Garland, and that's pretty much it for my video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So sit back and enjoy what's left of it. Thanks guys.